Um, all right. Well, welcome and thank you everyone who decided to join today's webinar. My name is Dr. Sophia Wenzler. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist and also the clinical lead here at SkinPick. SkinPick is a therapist-assisted online program that helps you learn to cope with skin picking disorder, and SkinPick is also the sponsor of this webinar. Today we're going to talk about how personality traits and skin picking are connected. And I want to encourage each and every one of you to stick around until the end. It's going to be about a 40-minute presentation, and then we're going to have a 15 to 20-minute Q&A section where you can ask any and all questions that might come to mind. I want to encourage you to write down the questions in the Q&A section of Zoom. Please don't raise your hand, just write the question down, and I'm going to try to answer as many of those questions as I can. All right, let's get right into it. It's quite a classical structure to this webinar. We're going to talk about what is personality, what do we mean when we talk about it, where does it come from, why are we different in terms of our personality traits, and then we're going to do a very quick personality test. There's different theories out there, but I'm taking the most popular and well-researched one, the big 5 personality traits, and you're all going to find out where you stand in terms of those 5 personality traits. And then we're going to look into how personality and mental health are connected, and more specifically, how personality is connected to skin picking, conclude what we learned, and go into the Q&A section. Okay. So what is personality? Of course, we all have a concept of what personality is, and we use it in our daily lives, but let's just be sure that we have a common definition, that we're on the same page. So I like this definition very much by Professor Carol Dweck. Personality is about how and why people differ from each other in their characteristic modes of thinking, feeling, and acting. So we all have a specific way of how certain inner or outer situations make us think, feel, and act or want to act. And we are different in that way. So personality is basically a way to categorize people based on how they react to situations. So it's just another way to compare ourselves to other people, or compare people to other people, in terms of this person is tidier than this one, this person is more shy than the other one. It's a way to categorize someone. Personality is relatively stable over time, but it can change due to medical or neurological reasons, or if we go through very drastic life events, traumatic life events. But also it can change with age. Basically, until the age of 18, we don't talk about like a stable personality, and we would also not diagnose a personality disorder, because we think that until the age of 18, things are still flexible, things can still change, and the personality is still being built or being developed. Okay, so as I said, personality is a way to draw comparisons. You can look at a group of people and categorize them in terms of there are tall or short people, there are different hair colors, and there are different personality traits. Now, you might ask yourself, but why? Like, why would we even do research, or why would we even look at that? You know, it's just another way to put people into boxes. And that's true. We're kind of like drawing conclusions, we're overgeneralizing, but also if we put people in boxes, if we kind of see similarities between certain people and personality traits, and sort those people into groups, we can draw conclusions. You know, if we say there's personality trait orange, green, brown, and yellow, then we can say, okay, so there's more women with personality trait brown than women with personality trait yellow. Personality trait brown is more rare than personality trait green. And that's, one of the purposes of this webinar, there are, for example, more people suffering from skin picking in personality group orange than in personality group yellow. So we do those categorizations in order to draw conclusions and understand things on a deeper level. Where does personality come from? Why don't we all have the same personality? There's basically only two options where it can come from. It can be genetic, we can be born with it, or it can be acquired during life, based on the things that we go through. And I kind of gave away a little bit already when I said, the personality is not fixed until we're 18 years old. So it cannot be genetic, because then it would just be the same at any given age. So it is a mix out of nature and nurture. And you can there's actually research pointing towards which component is stronger, which defines personality stronger, nature or nurture. And you might ask yourself, how would we even find that out? If I would just look at myself and I see my own personality, how would I know, what was biological and what was my life experience? I couldn't, but there's research that we can do when we look at twins. Specifically, like there's different kinds of twin studies, but the one that I'm presenting to you is based on identical twins. And so identical twins share 100% of DNA. And there's a huge study, granted, that would not pass any ethical committee today, but it was from 1979 to 1999, where identical twins were actually separated at birth and then raised apart from each other. This is the Minnesota twin study of twins reared apart by psychologist Thomas Bouchard and his colleagues. And that gave kind of a unique opportunity to analyze, how specific traits in those twins were defined by genetics, DNA, and how they were defined by the environment. Because if we know, okay, those are identical twins, then all similarities between the two of them are based on their biology, and all the differences are based on the environment, because they share biology, but they are raised in two different environments. I hope that made sense. And they looked at all kinds of, traits, for example, also IQ, and found, for example, that between each set of twins, there was 30% difference in IQ, and draw from that finding the conclusion that 70% must be due to genes. So IQ is apparently highly defined by genes, whereas personality was 15 to 55% in variance in personality was due to genetic factors. 15 to 55, it's a range because there's different personality traits, and the results actually varied between the different personality traits. When I'm going to refer to this result further on in the presentation, I'm just going to talk about 35%, because that's the average between 15 and 55%. So 35% were based on genetics and 65% based on environment. And obviously, this is not a set in stone. This is only one study. There's different studies. Sometimes the numbers vary, but so far it looks like the greater part, or the more significant predictor of personality is our environment, and not genes. But there is a strong genetic factor as well. And this genetic factor we actually call temperament. It's kind of, that's the predisposition, that's the personality predisposition that we're born with. We're born with a certain temperament, and babies, you can see that from the beginning, differ in terms of their temperament. And you can kind of define temperament on 9 different dimensions. So you have things like the activity level. Some babies are just born more active than others, adaptability, how well they can handle changes. For example, when we leave the house, approach and withdrawal, do they react to their environment? Do they react to their environment with curiosity or caution? Distractibility, how long are they able to focus on one thing? Even as babies, we can already, measure that. Intensity, how mild or intense are their emotional reactions to things happening in their environment? Mood, is it mostly positive or mostly negative? Persistence, how quickly or slowly do they lose interest in certain activities or things? Regularity, mostly in biological patterns in terms of sleep, uh, how do you say, I don't know how to say in English, peeing and stuff like that. There's probably a better term for that. And sensitivity, how strongly they react to outside stimuli, for example, whether, noises will wake them up or whether they're going to sleep through it. And each and every one of us is born with a certain temperament. And that temperament defines our personality by about 35%. And then we meet our environment from the first day that we're born, and our environment includes a lot of different things. It here I represented basically with a house, so that would be our parents, their parenting style, their temperament and personality, whether they are siblings, the culture we grew up in, the language we learn, the socioeconomical status, the social interactions, the life events we go through. Those are all things that will shape our personality as well, and then make up, the person that we become. And since I gave you an example of like what temperament means, I also want to give you an example of how our environment can shape our personality. Since there are so many different factors, I chose one example. Attachment. Attachment is actually something very interesting, and has a really strong influence on the personality we develop. So attachment would be the emotional bond that we form in the early years of life between between ourselves, if we're like considering ourselves the baby, and our primary caregivers. And feeling attached is like a feeling of being connected, knowing that there's a person there that will support us and care for us. And there's actually different attachment styles based on the attachment theory by John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth. So based on the kind of early attachment experiences that we have in those first years, we will develop different attachment styles, and those attachment styles will be part of our personality. And that attachment theory is actually a huge theory. It's very important. There's a lot of research about it, and it's kind of the theoretic base of a lot of therapeutical approaches. Also, it's kind of found its way into kind of pop psychology or like social media psychology. There's a lot of online tests where you can kind of get an indicator of what attachment style you have. Right now, I want to give you an example of how, a baby with a certain temperament might, meet their parents. In my example, it's the mother, but obviously it can be a father as well. It can be whatever primary caregiver, and how those first interactions might lead to different attachment styles. So let's look at baby number one. Here's its first experiences with the world. To interact with my mother, I smile and gurgle at her. She smiles and gurgles back, and it feels good. When I'm upset, she comes over and comforts me. I conclude that I can engage her. She accepts me. People are responsive to me, and the world seems to be a good, safe place. So that baby meets the world and has the experience that there's someone there caring for her, consistently reacting in the same positive way, and that will result in secure attachment. That baby, when it's grown up to be an adult, will likely be able to trust, to be resilient, and to be generally self-confident. So this is how the attachment style can predict certain personality traits. And about 50 to 65% of children form a secure attachment with their primary caregivers. Baby number 2. When I was scared, I looked to my mother. She was displeased and I felt frustrated and still scared. The next time I was distressed, I tried it again and the same thing happened. However, when I want to play, she is pleased and happy to play. I conclude that my mother does not like it when I'm needy, that I should engage her only when I feel happy, and that people will only love and accept you if you are happy. So that would be an example for an anxious attachment. What you see here is a really early kind of rejection, at least of some part of the baby, the part that's scared or irritated or cries. So this child learns that they can't always rely on others, and that they have to be a certain version of themselves to be accepted. As adults, this baby might be highly motivated to avoid this kind of rejection. They will not show weakness or negative emotions, keep those to themselves, might prioritize self-sufficiency over attachment and vulnerability. And that way they might have trouble maintaining a trusting and intimate relationship with another person. So that's how this kind of attachment experience will predict the adult's personality, and about 15% of us have an anxious avoidant attachment. The last baby number 3. Sometimes when I cry, my mother comes and comforts me, and sometimes she gets annoyed. Sometimes when I want to play, she's happy to play, and sometimes she turns away irritated. I never know when I will get one reaction and when I'll get the other. People are unpredictable and my control over them is limited. This leaves me feeling anxious. What if I really need something and no one is there for me? So that would be an example of an anxious preoccupied or anxious ambivalent attachment. Again, 15% of the population, or like babies or adults. And what you see here is kind of an intermittent reinforcement. I show the same behavior and sometimes it leads to the desired outcome and sometimes it doesn't. So it creates a constant craving for love, approval, and acceptance, while at the same time, you can never be sure of it. You're always afraid to be disappointed. And adults who have this kind of attachment style have a higher likelihood to suffer from low self-esteem, strong fear of rejection or abandonment, and might behave in certain ways in relationships. They might be more dependent and more clingy. So that would be an example of how those early attachment experiences can influence our personality. However, obviously, it's much more complex than that. When I talk about 35% DNA and things like that, it's more complex, and we're still only in the process of understanding those complex processes. And obviously, attachment is not a one-way relationship. The temperament of the baby will also influence the parents' ability to provide for their needs. If you have a baby with a very problematic or very difficult temperament that is very hard to soothe, that cries a lot, that is very irritable and distractible, then it is going to be harder to create a secure attachment. So it's a constant interaction and a very fluid process. All right. Let's be a little bit more practical. Let's do a quick personality test. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through 5 dimensions of personality, 5 different personality traits. On the left upper corner of the screen, you see a letter. In this case, it's an O. So I want you to take a piece of paper or your phone and then note your results for each of those 5 personality dimensions. and note the letter so you know which dimension it is. So now you would, if you would look at this dimension, the question is, I see myself as someone who has few artistic interests. And then you can choose from disagree strongly, that would be a score of 5, to agree strongly, which would be a score of 1. So I want you to write down your score. For example, if the person would go through those two questions, I see myself as someone who has few artistic interests, agree a little, that would be a score of 2. And then I see myself as someone who has an active imagination, disagree a little, that would be another score of 2. 2 plus 2 equals 4. So their score for the personality dimension O is going to be 4. So now I want you to go through those questions and note your own score. Personality trait, C. I see myself as someone who tends to be lazy. I see myself as someone who does a thorough job. Personality trait, E. I see myself as someone who is reserved. I see myself as someone who is outgoing, sociable. And pay attention to the inverse ranking of the numbers, right? It's not always 5 to 1. Sometimes it's 1 to 5. Personality trait A. I see myself as someone who is generally trusting. I see myself as someone who tends to find fault with others. And lastly, personality trait N. I see myself as someone who is relaxed and handles stress well. I see myself as someone who gets nervous easily. All right. That's the end. It's obviously a very brief personality test. I cannot do like a really comprehensive long one because that would completely exceed our time limits here. But it's like a quick first indicator. The 5 personality dimensions that we went through by letter are O, openness to experience, C, conscientiousness, B, extraversion, A, agreeableness, and N, neuroticism. And for each one of them, you're going to have a score from 2 to 10. And we're just generally going to say that 2 to 4 is like a mild score, 5 to 7 is a medium score, and 8 to 10 is a high score. And as we go through those personality traits and look at how they are connected to mental health, you can, keep that in the back of your mind and just like check yourself a little bit. And as I said, there are many different personality theories out there. If you type personality test in any kind of browser, you will see tons of options where you can online check your personality and then get results if you leave your email address. I chose this one because it's grounded in very sound academic research. The this theory that those dimensions make sense. I'm going to explain to you how we got there. There's been a lot of research done about that. So first of all, it's a very sound, very stable theory, but also if a researcher wants to check, okay, how is personality connected to something else, for example, mental illness or any other characteristic, they will most likely take this personality theory and a test based on this personality theory. So we have the most research based on this personality theory. And those big 5 personality traits have been shown to be consistent across cultures and stable over time. So openness basically describes how open a person is to new ideas and experiences. Conscientiousness is how goal-directed, persistent, and organized a person is. Extroversion, how much a person is energized by the outside world. Very important, because obviously the other end of the spectrum would be introversion, and sometimes we think introverts don't like to have the company of other people, which is not true. It's just that other people draw their energy away, the introverts, and extroverts get energy by socializing. Agreeableness, how much a person puts others' interests and needs ahead of their own. And neuroticism, how sensitive a person is to stress and negative emotional triggers. And now this is not that, like some psychologists said, oh, it makes sense to have those 5 personality dimensions. This is based on a lot of research where people kind of went over a lot of different questions that can indicate a person's personality, and then they try to draw conclusions, okay? So for example, if a person would answer hi on a question is whether they're sociable, they might also answer hi on the question of being energetic and outward directed. And then they also might answer hi on a question that's about whether I am talkative or not. And so researchers discovered, okay, a person who scores high on sociability has a high likelihood on also scoring high on being energetic and talkative. So those 3 things might be connected. And then they gave it like a headline, something that describes a group of different sub-personality traits, and that's called extroversion. So this is a very simple way to explain a very complex statistical analysis of drawing conclusions, taking a lot of different details and then drawing broader conclusions about that. And that's how we basically got to those 5 personality traits in the end. Okay, so how are they connected, mental health and personality, and why do we even ask this question? So we ask this question because we're trying to understand why some people go through traumatic, difficult life events and, stay mentally healthy, and why others develop mental health issues. And because there's differences between people. Some go through those experiences unscathed, and others, will suffer from symptoms afterwards. And there's many different indicators that kind of show us why some people develop psychological disorders and others don't, and personality is one of them. That's why we look at this connection to understand it on a deeper level. And when we look at general mental health and its connection to openness, and then we will see that people who are imaginative, creative, original, and curious, who score high on openness, have a greater risk of suffering from depression, simply because this openness also means that they're more open to their own emotions and to perceive intense emotions in the outside world, from the outside world. People who are conscientious, meaning people who are hardworking, well-organized, and punctual, actually tend to be more confident and tend to have higher social functioning. So this would be a personality trait that protects you from mental illness rather than, making you vulnerable to it. The same goes for extroversion. So people who are joiners, talkative, active, and affectionate will tend to suffer less from anxiety and tend to have more positive mood and more enjoyment in their lives. Same goes for agreeableness. So people who score higher on agreeableness, people who are trusting, lenient, soft-hearted, and good-natured will have higher social functioning and also more positive mood and enjoyment. Neuroticism, on the other hand, people who score high on neuroticism tend to be more worried, temperamental, self-conscious, and emotional. And those have a higher chance for social dysfunction, negative mood, loss of enjoyment, depression, anxiety, and loss of confidence. So if you ask me who's the general culprit in predicting a higher chance to suffer from poor mental health, then that would be neuroticism. So let's look at this one a little bit more closely. Subscales of neuroticism would be emotional instability, the tendency to have mood swings, to feel sad, anxious, or irritable more often, stress reactivity, so poor reactions to normal stressful life events, self-consciousness, to be more self-aware and worry more about how others perceive us, feeling more vulnerable to life's challenges, and impulsiveness. So people who score high on neuroticism have a higher likelihood to act on impulse, particularly in emotional situations. And I know those subscales might almost sound like a recipe for mental health problems, but I do want to encourage you with every personality trait and every part of ourselves, there's always good and bad sides to it. So you can also look at neuroticism in a completely different light. You could say because people who score high in neuroticism are more self-aware, they also might be more reflective. They might be more reflective in terms of their actions and might anticipate consequences better. They might be more respecting to rules because it's important to them to stay in line and to not be perceived as negative by other people. They might be more sensitive because they perceive very intense emotions themselves. They might also be able to understand another person's emotions better or have more understanding for other people's problems. Because they tend to get anxious and stressed more easily, they might be better at seeking safety or being prepared for threats. And we actually have research that show that people who score high in neuroticism are more attuned to their body and show more healthcare behaviors. So we have research that actually shows that people with high neuroticism tend to detect cancer faster, more earlier, because they're attuned to their body, and once they find out or think that something's wrong, they might do whatever it takes to feel safer or to find, the right treatment. Let's be even more specific. Let's look at personality and skin picking. As I go on now, I'm going to actually cite research that is sometimes related to hair pulling, sometimes to skin picking. I'm going to kind of mix it a little bit because there's not a huge body of research on personality and BFRB's body-focused repetitive behaviors, which is kind of like the group that skin picking is one element of. So I'm just going to talk about hair pulling and skin picking just so I have more research to present to you. Okay, so as we already found out, neuroticism is a predictor for poor mental health. It is also a predictor for skin picking. So people who score high on neuroticism also suffer from higher skin picking severity, and it's actually with every 1 point increase in neuroticism scores, you have a 10% greater chance of a skin picking diagnosis. In terms of openness and agreeableness, we found that greater openness was associated with greater skin picking severity, just as it was associated with a higher chance for depression. Again, because people who score high on openness are more aware of and immersed in their feelings. And if they feel more distressed, they might need, engage in skin picking behavior more to kind of regulate those emotions. And there was a negative correlation between agreeableness and skin picking severity, meaning that the lower the agreeableness score, the higher the skin picking severity. And one theory is that because when people are score lower on agreeableness, they care less about what other people think, and sometimes caring about what other people think actually stops us from skin picking. Introversion, meaning the other end of the spectrum of extroversion, was also significantly associated with worse picking severity, higher perceived stress, and higher depression. There was no direct connection between conscientiousness and skin picking. And I know that's a lot of facts, so I kind of try to create, like a stereotypic example of the personality of someone who might suffer from skin picking. So that person might be more imaginative, creative, curious, and open to new ideas and experiences than others. They might have a broad range of interests and enjoy intellectual pursuits. They might experience more negative emotions such as anxiety, worry, and insecurity, be more sensitive to stress and prone to mood swings, and generally more introverted and reserved than others. They might prefer solitude or small groups over large gatherings and social events. And they might not seek out social interactions as often and may feel more drained by them as other people. Obviously, that's a broad generalization, but since we already talked about like trying to find connections between personality and skin picking, so that would be, the prototype of a skin picking personality. For those of you who suffer from skin picking and might have scored high on neuroticism, I do that can be can be kind of difficult to process right now. You might feel discouraged, but I do want to talk about a very important topic, which is acceptance versus change when we talk about personality. I did say that personality, and it is true that personality is stable. So if we say that personality is about how and why people differ from each other in their characteristic modes of thinking, feeling, and acting, then it's true. The same situation, specific situations based on your personality will always lead to the same pattern of intuitive reaction in terms of emotions, thoughts, and action tendency. But that first automatic reaction in each situation that is based on your personality is only the first moment, okay? Everything that comes after that is completely up to you. So that first intuitive reaction is something we just have to accept. But then what we do with it and how we go on from that is in our hands, all right? So if, for example, you score low on extroversion, meaning high on introversion, and you go to a party, then once you enter the door, your first intuitive reaction might always be some kind of stress or anxiety. You might think, what are they going to think about me? And your action tendency might be to want to run away from the situation. And that's some part of you that you just have to accept. And introversion comes with a lot of beautiful sides to it as well. But then what you do afterwards is completely in your hand. You can still decide to say, wow, I'm going to face this challenge. Go inside and pick someone to talk to, right? Your personality doesn't have to stop you from living the life that you want to live. Um, Specifically, when we talk about neuroticism, sometimes I like to look at it as in terms of like, bear with me, if your personality was a horse, then, or you can do the same for cars. Wait, but let's do it first for horses. So people who score high in neuroticism, their personality and their inner experiences might be more like a wild, untamed, strong horse that reacts to every small thing, maybe in an intense way, that might tend to interpret situations in a more threatening and negative way, and be less stable, in terms of their mood. So that might be, the personality and inner experience of a new person who scores high on neuroticism, whereas someone who scores low, their inner experience might be more like a, tame, domesticated horse. And, riding this wild, untamed horse is much more challenging. So to kind of regulate your stress levels and moods and emotions when you score high on neuroticism might be much harder. But it also comes with a lot of strength and power behind it. The other idea would be to describe it to a race car and like oh my God, I know nothing about cars, a regular Mazda or whatever. So there's different way to look at it, and it's certainly harder to drive a race car or to ride a wild untamed horse. But there's also, a lot of power and experience and color and variance in there. So it really depends on how you look at it. Long story short, you are the one who shapes and defines who you are every day anew. Your personality is only one aspect of the experience. All right, let's conclude. Our personality defines our initial and automatic modes of thinking, feeling, and acting in certain situations. And those automatic modes of thinking, feeling, and acting differ from person to person. If we ask where personality comes from, then we will see that it's a mix out of the out of temperament, the personality that we're born with, and or environment, meaning the experiences that we go through in life. And actually, the experiences that we go through have a stronger impact than the DNA. The most popular theory of personality is the Big Five personality theory, that says that there are 5 dimensions of personality: openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. If we look at those dimensions, then we will see that high neuroticism is a general predictor of poor mental health, and almost all mental health disorders, including skin picking disorder. While your personality might make you prone to develop unhealthy emotional regulation skills like skin picking, however, you can still take control of your mental health and change your patterns and learn to cope. That's all the content for today. I just want to, in the end, remind you of all the free resources that we offer here at Skin Picking. We have the monthly webinars, obviously, because you're just participating in one, but we also have online forums and blogs on our website, skinpick.com. You will also find a recording of this webinar on our YouTube page, SkinPick, and a lot of other very interesting webinars that you can watch the recordings of. And we're on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok as well. We have a promo code in case you want to try out our online therapy program. You can get a $100 discount on your first subscription. And that's it. Now I'm going to go on to answering some questions. Let's check the time. I went a little bit over time. I'm so sorry. We have 15 minutes left for questions. So right now would be the time to write them down if you want in the Q&A. Okay, let's see. The first question, I don't understand. Where are the questions? I think you'll have to, I don't get that. Let's move on to the next one. Would biting of the inside of lips and cheeks be considered the same as skin picking? Does the severity light biting versus deep bleeding biting mean worse mental state? So as I said before, there's a group of different conditions that's called body-focused repetitive behaviors. And that includes hair pulling, skin picking, nail biting, and also cheek biting. So it would be kind of in the same group of disorders just as skin picking. Does the severity mean a worse mental state? Well, that's very vague, but yeah, like if you, I mean, you would call it a greater symptom severity, you know, if the biting leads to more bleeding, just like more picking or deeper picking or more pulling would also be called a higher symptom severity. That's how I would say it. Okay, wait. Answer it live, answer it live. Not a question, but thank you for the compliment. Just wanted to say thank you for this. You're welcome. I'm happy you found it helpful. Well, that's a difficult one. How do conditions like autism and OCD affect personality with regards to skin picking disorder? So, autism spectrum disorder and OCD are both connected to skin picking disorder, which means if you suffer from skin picking disorder, you have a higher likelihood to suffer also to be on the spectrum or to suffer from OCD / the other way around. We don't always know what's the chicken and the egg. Like if you suffer from OCD or are on the spectrum, then you have a higher likelihood to develop skin picking disorder. And as I said, for example, high score in neuroticism would predict higher chance to suffer from OCD. So I guess they're all, you know, interconnected. I think you could say that. I'm not able to see the questions, but if you wrote down your question here, then you have to see the questions. I mean, it's all in one category. If you go to the top of your screen and then click on the More button, you should see a red dot on top of it with a number. Then you will see all the questions. You have skin picking, but you also have a desire to eat the skin around your nails or other areas of your skin. Maybe even eating the hair you pull when you pick it. What would that be called? That is also a part that's also would be, you know, part of the group of body-focused repetitive behaviors. Not a question, but thank you so much, Dr. Wenzel, for such an informative and interesting webinar. Well, thank you. Always happy to hear compliments. Okay, not so many questions today. Still have a little time left. there's any more questions, you can write them down in the Q&A section. Wait, I just want to go back to this one question. Maybe I read it wrong. If you have skin picking, but you also have a desire to eat the skin around your nails or other areas of your skin, maybe even eating the hair you pull. Actually, well, that is a body-focused repetitive behavior, but there's also, so skin picking, there's another way to call it. It's called dermatillomania. Derma means skin and tillo means to pick. And hair pulling is trichotillomania. Hair, tricho means hair in Greek, tillo means pulling. And if it's the actual eating of the hair, for example, it would be called trichophagia. So that in the very scientific language, there's different names for it. But basically, if you look for treatment, then it's the same. It doesn't matter if it's skin picking or eating the skin or pulling the skin or eating it. The treatment is very similar, and all of those behaviors would have the headline of body-focused repetitive behaviors. Okay. Okay, a few more questions. Where do we see the recording? Sorry, I missed the majority of the session due to work. I know this is also, please don't raise your hand. You can just write down your question in the Q&A section. I mentioned that at the beginning. So you can see the recording on our YouTube page, skinpick.com, and also recordings of all the past webinars that we did. And I know this webinar is not at a convenient time. It's because we have clients from all over the world who join in. So for some people, it's always at not a convenient time, but I'm so happy that you joined in the end, and you can see the whole recording on YouTube. I used to pull hair as a teen, then fine for a long time, then biting inside my cheeks, then okay again. Now past few years skin picking. Why the change? That happens sometimes. Most people actually, I think, stick with one of them, hair pulling or skin picking or cheek biting or nail biting, whatever it is. But again, those are all similar behaviors. And they have certain similarity in terms of you have a mild, you have, a sensory element to it. For example, pulling your hair leaves a certain feeling, biting your cheek. It's all kind of like a mild pain that's involved in it. So sometimes it's, the triggers are also sometimes very simple. So for example, when you have, how do you call this, like acne or things in your face, you might tend to pick your skin more. If you see, for example, you start having gray hair, or you see like things about where hair grows that you don't like, then you might tend to pull more, and then those things can, change over the course of your life as well. But again, there's a lot of similarities, and if you learn to treat one of them, you already learned a little bit about how to treat the other. Is skin picking a condition that can be cured? I have been doing this for 20 plus years, and I'm wondering if it is something I need to simply accept as something that will always be part of my life to some degree, or if I can learn to stop for good. So those are very black and white terms, right? You're talking about suffering from it for 20 plus years versus curing it or stopping for good. Most likely the reality is somewhere in the gray zone. I always say, no matter how old you are and no matter for how long you have been suffering from this condition, you can always improve it. And there are treatments for it. The gold standard would be habit reversal training. That's a CBT-based treatment approach. That's also what we do here at SkinPick. So you could join our program and learn coping better with your skin picking. You can also find a specialized therapist wherever you are and start working with them, but it has to be someone who knows what skin picking is. And then you can always make a change, but it's coping with the skin picking. You cannot cure it. You cannot completely make it go away. It's always going to be something that's in the background, but we also have clients who really reduced their skin picking to not picking at all anymore. So yeah, there's always something you can do. It can always get better. But obviously, if you suffered from it for 20 plus years, it's not, a quick process. It requires a lot of work and consistency. Is it effective to consciously stop skin picking as you become aware of it? Would it stop over time? Does this create more mental stress or dysregulation? Oh, that's a great question. So, being conscious and aware of the picking is actually the first and a very important step towards stopping or coping better with it. There are people who become more aware of it and can then stop. It can go away this way, but in most cases, you need additional strategies and you need to go through treatment. Awareness is not enough. And that's exactly because of that. Skin picking has a function. It helps us to soothe ourselves, to regulate ourselves, to deal with negative emotions or boredom. And when we take it away and don't learn another more healthy way to deal with it, then it can create mental stress and dysregulation, as this participant said, and then we're likely to just fall back to doing it again or do something else or switch to another body focused repetitive behavior. So in some cases, it works to just be aware and then not do it anymore. But in a lot of cases, we actually have to learn another more healthy behavior and have to acquire specific coping strategies to stop. Are these eating behaviors something that can be shared, as I am embarrassed by this and have never shared with a professional? Do I need to visit with a professional that specializes in this? So if you have this eating behavior, I would really advise you to, yes, seek out a specialist. You have no reason to be embarrassed by this. There's a lot of other people who suffer from the same condition. You're not alone with this. Um, if you're specifically, so first of all, yes, seek out treatment, find a specialist. You can also join skinpick.com, skinpick or program, not the website, skinpick. But also sharing in general, if you're embarrassed, there's actually, it was the topic of one of my past webinars where I talked about the benefits of sharing, because yes, the eating behavior for a lot of people comes with a certain degree of shame, but also skin picking and hair pulling as the main disorder. And there's no reason to be ashamed of it. It's just another condition, just like you shouldn't be afraid of, being depressed or having allergies or having anxiety. And if you feel like sharing it with someone who really doesn't know what it is and where it comes from is too difficult, then you can also share it, in Facebook groups. There's communities of people who suffer from BFRBs, and there's safe spaces where you can open up about it and talk about it so you feel less alone and less ashamed. We'll be following the YouTube channel. Thank you, Doc. I love that you called me Doc because it's like I'm not a doctor, but I do have a doctoral degree, so I like it. Thank you. Um, we're running out of time. I'm gonna go through the last two questions. When I feel or see something on my skin, I almost never can stand the urge to pick. I'm very neurotic, and that makes me feel lazy, especially about how someone else thinks of me. Someone else might think you're lazy. Okay. Even if I had tried many things. The only thing that works the best is to avoid contact with my skin and hide mirrors. Would you say I am not strong enough or that I am too lazy to fight, even though I have made a major difference in the severity of picking? No, I don't even like, to be honest, I don't even know why you would call yourself lazy. I don't completely get it. I think you don't have to be that critical of yourself. The urge to pick can be very, very strong, and it's very hard to resist. And when you say the only thing that works is to avoid contact with my skin and hide mirrors, that's actually one of the coping strategies that we teach at skinpick.com. Why am I saying skinpick.com? At skinpick. It's called stimulus control, and it means reducing the triggers in your environment and hiding mirrors, turning down the light, or specifically not entering rooms with mirrors in the evenings, which is for a lot of people a time when they're triggered, trying to be more in the company of other people, putting on gloves, whatever it is, those are all effective. Whatever helps you reduce the skin picking is an effective strategy and just doesn't have to be called lazy. So don't judge yourself, and if it helps, if it works, and if it helps consistently over time, then stick with it. And you can also try to do competing response if you haven't tried that out. There's actually a really beautiful webinar on that topic by one of our therapists, Laura Santner, on fidgets and different ways of like practicing competing response. That's also on our YouTube channel, and that would be just an add-on on the effective stimulus control strategies that you're already using. Not lazy. What is the success rate of your program if you have data? Thanks. I don't know I don't know that by heart. What was it? 40%. Man, I don't know it by heart. We have really good success rates. So I think 90% of the people who finish the program would recommend it to others. Please don't be mad at me if I get this wrong, but yes, 90% correct, recommended to others. Most people who go through the program feel a reduction in symptoms within, I think, 4 weeks. Those success rates are all on our website, skinpick.com. So you can look it up, but we actually published a paper on how effective our program is, and it got accepted in a psychological journal. So it's sound research that we did on our own data that confirms that the program is effective. I think the most important thing is because in the end, it's numbers, right? And it's different for everyone. There are some people who do the program and are not successful, and there's a lot of people who do the program and are successful. It really depends on how open you are and how much you communicate with your therapist in the program. So if you are motivated, if you do the work, and if you communicate openly and honestly with your therapist, then there's no reason why the program should not be effective for you. And also, you can look up the numbers on our website, and I don't know them by heart, but next time I'm going to know them. Okay, last question. How long is the promo code going to be valid? I don't know, but probably for a few more weeks. So you can think about it a little bit, but if you have the motivation to start the program right now, then start right now, because putting off things is never helpful. All right. Now we're over time. Thank you so much, everyone, for participating and for asking those interesting and helpful questions. I hope you have a very good rest of your day in whichever time zone you are, and I hope I see you again in the next webinar.